Good morning, everybody. By my clock is exactly 10 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started for our monthly Maryland Higher Education Commission meeting. We do have a quorum with 8 of our commissioners present, Commissioners Agu, Howe, Serrano, Thompson, Williams, Wormack, Robinson, and myself, Motz. We have no public comments. I am told we are going to skip the remarks from me and acting secretary because our student commissioner, Ms. Alexis Faison, who's a senior at Loyola, and has an internship at the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe. So she is taking away from her day job to join us. So we're going to have her go ahead and give her recommendations regarding the 2024 election and student participation. And then we will go back and do opening remarks and the minutes approval. So with that, Ms. Faison, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Chair Motz. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for making time for me this morning. I'm calling in from DC, so very all over the place today, but nonetheless, very happy to be here with you all. So as you'll remember, this past December, we came to speak to you all regarding a recommendation we had regarding voting for higher education and making sure that students had the access and the means to do so. That being said, we received a lot of great feedback from you all, and we did our best to incorporate this feedback into a new recommendation proposal. So I believe Emily is on the call, and if so, if you'd be able to screen share that for us, great. Thank you.
You're muted, Emily.
She's sorry, I'm in the same room with her because we're in Annapolis. Emily said to go ahead to Ms. Faison because it'll take her a minute to pull it up.
Okay, nonetheless, I can just start reading the general recommendation and you'll see this as Emily begins to screen share, but this is what is listed in bold at the top. As representatives of the Maryland Student Voice of the Commission, we recognize the plethora of existing efforts to engage students and young adults to vote. We also recognize that as an advisory council to the Commission, it is important to ensure these efforts are sustained throughout Maryland. We recognize that these efforts empower students to be active participants in the civic process of elections. Therefore, the Student Advisory Council recommends that the Commission and the Secretary of Higher Education recognize, lift up, and continue to support the existing efforts, both through campus-based efforts and through existing organizations that intend to increase civic participation amongst college students and reduce barriers that obstruct students from voting, such as providing resources and supports to students to participate as election judges, providing accommodations and resources to out-of-state students, reviewing the 2024-25 academic calendar and 26-27, 28-29, and make appropriate amendments and guidance to participate in the voting process, and generally encouraging students to participate in our nationwide democracy, or democratic process rather, also known as registering to vote, using campus spaces as polling places, and additional recommendations included. So if you scroll down below, what we really try to focus on is it was named that there are already a lot of local community organizations that are doing this work. So we took the time to research, and granted, this is definitely only a snapshot of some of the organizations that are doing this work, but nonetheless, these are ones that have been very active and present in helping college campuses and college students. So we listed out what is available for consideration for higher education administrations if they're not already utilizing these resources. In addition to that, we cited various election laws, articles, and just to ensure that we are maintaining language and requirements, and ensuring that students, along with administrations, are aware of the duties that are required in order to sustain a civic process. This is also a part that was included in the last recommendation, but this is a timeline proposal. This is not a timeline that administrations have to stay strictly to. However, it is encouraged that they achieve some of these goals and recommendations during this time. That so once election cycles roll around, they'll have more preparation for themselves and students and anyone else that is involved in the process. Obviously ongoing is supporting out-of-state students in their ability to vote. Myself being from New Jersey, it has been a very interesting process looking at Maryland election cycles. So being able to have the opportunity to still participate and be involved is something that would personally benefit me, along with a ton of out-of-state students, and also just students who aren't out of state but are still trying to navigate what it means to be involved in an election, especially for our students that are on the younger side of being freshly 18, going into college and kind of navigating these elections, and especially with an upcoming presidential election nonetheless. It's incredibly important that we're utilizing these resources and building upon them and supporting administrations in doing so. So this is the recommendation that we do have. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to field those. And thank you all again for your time and listening to what we have to share with you today.
Thank you, Ms. Faison. We are extremely grateful for your work and the work of your colleagues on the advisory council. And I saw them all listed at the end of your recommendation. So please take back from our commission to your council that we are very, very grateful for your hard work and your very thoughtful recommendations.
Thank you. I will.
Do we have any questions from my fellow commissioners? You did such a thorough job. You anticipated and answered all of our questions, Ms. Faison.
Yeah, and we definitely took, trust me when I say, we took all of your feedback and we really tried to incorporate it. And we had a lot of conversations as to ensuring that we're doing our work as a council, but also meeting the needs of the commissioners as well, because we understand you come from various backgrounds, and making sure that we're representing that, and your expertise was a focal point for our council.
Well, wonderful. We strive to be an extremely student-focused commission and an agency. And so your input is invaluable. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask my fellow MHEC commissioners to consider two motions. The first motion would be a motion to adopt the council's recommendations. And the second motion would be a motion to ask Dr. Rai, our acting secretary, to send a letter to all college presidents, 2-year and 4-year, public and private, thanking them for their good work, reminding them of their legal obligations in this matter, which Ms. Faison and her council have set forth, and asking colleges to report back to MHEC and to our commission in particular about any particular initiatives they're undertaking during this election cycle. So I'll start with the first motion. Do we have Commissioner Howe?
Yes, I move the first motion to do whatever you said.
Okay, so just so we can get it right for the record, because I see at least one of our lawyers on the call. Do we have a motion to adopt the recommendation of the Student Advisory Council dated February 28th?
Yes, I move to adopt the recommendation of the Student Advisory Council on February 28th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right, the ayes have it. And then the second motion would be the motion to ask Dr. Rai to send a letter to college presidents, 2-year and 4-year, public and private. Basically, like I just said, thanking them for their good work, reminding them of their legal obligations, and asking them to report back to MHEC about any particular initiatives they're undertaking this election cycle. Do we have a motion for that?
I move that Dr. Rai send a letter to the 2- and 4-year institutions to do what we said.
Wonderful. Is there a second?
I second.
Second.
Thanks, Commissioner Robinson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right. Thank you very much. Let the record reflect that both motions were unanimously approved. And again, Ms. Faison, thank you very much. And please take back
Thank you very much.
all of our commissioners to your council.
I will. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank Commissioner Robinson briefly. She was such a help to our council in guiding us and giving us some influence in terms of what we were writing. So a special thank you to her for all her work and guidance to our council.
Thank you. And you did a great job. Really proud.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much. And good luck to those testifying in Annapolis today.
Thank you very much. And good luck with your internship in Washington.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. So back to the agenda, just opening remarks. I wanted to publicly commend all of our commissioners who have been confirmed by the Maryland Senate since last we met. That would be Commissioners Burnham, Dukes, Warmack, and Commissioner Robinson, our student commissioner. All of them were appointed after last year's legislative session. So they had to be approved this session, and they were approved by the Senate. So congratulations to all of you. And then just to add that Dr. Rai, our acting secretary, who was also appointed after last year's legislative session, is going to have his confirmation hearing this coming Monday, March 4th, Monday night, the traditional Senate Executive Nominations Committee. So Dr. Rai, we're looking forward to working with you on a more permanent basis, and of course, wish you luck in your confirmation hearing. As I mentioned, many of us, Dr. Rai, Dr. Dow, who I'm in a room with now, Mr. Derek Coley, who oversees legislation and communications, external affairs, we're in Annapolis today because we are testifying on the Senate side on the bill related to the recommendations of the legislative work group on academic program review. We testified, Dr. Rai and I testified yesterday on the House side, HB 1244, and we're going to testify today on the Senate side. I know Dr. Dow has an update for us later in the call, so I will not steal her thunder, but just to say that the testimony went well yesterday, and we were joined by Dr. Wilson from Morgan, as well as others in the higher ed community, Vice Chancellor Rinn, Senior Vice Chancellor Rinn from University System of Maryland, as well as leadership from UMES. So, and Dr. Delegate Smith introduced the legislation. So it went well yesterday. We have our fingers crossed today in the Senate, and I will leave the rest to Dr. Dow. I have no other opening remarks. I will turn it over to the acting secretary. Hopefully it's the last time I'll be saying acting secretary. At our next meeting, he will be the secretary. Judge Howe.
Do we need to approve the minutes from November 15th?
Yes, we do. I think that's technically next, but since you mentioned it, let's do that now. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from November 15th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or opposition? All right, thank you, Judge Howe. The minutes have been unanimously approved. And Dr. Rai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Martz. I also want to add my congratulations to all commissioners who got through the confirmation hearing. I was able to watch one of them, so it was wonderful. And I'm also looking forward to my own confirmation hearing, as Chair Martz just indicated, on Monday, March the 4th. I'll appreciate a shorter title, dropping the acting word. But, we have been essentially camping in Annapolis for the last several weeks. A lot of bills, academic program review, heard about it, supporting budget, higher education budget, MHEC's budget, and there are a lot of other bills that impact higher education. We are providing support or giving our comments and reactions to those bills. So we are wonderfully supported by Mr. Derek Coley, our executive director for external communications and government relations. A lot of work on the budget side. Almost every bill has a financial note. So I want to thank our Assistant Secretary, Jeff Newman, for his expertise and his hard work in helping us get through that. You also heard that we are testifying on academic program approval bill. Very thankful to our Assistant Secretary, Emily Dow. I feel in this position so blessed that we have really outstanding professionals, experts, and very dedicated individuals at our agency. While we are busy in Annapolis, the work in Baltimore has not stopped. And in the agenda today, you will see some of that. I want to especially note the next completion goals for the state. The work is progressing there as well, and you will hear some update. As we move forward, we have a lot of logistical issues that we need to take care of, but I think this work, setting up completion goals for the state, is going to be one of the most important work. And I think this is our opportunity that at this time in higher education and changes in economy and changes in our demography, this is really our opportunity to put the state ahead of other states in the country. We have real opportunity here, and we will put all our energy and resources in that initiative. Thank you, Chair Martz, for the opportunity to speak.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dr. Rai. Any questions before we move to our next agenda item? All right. Our next item is an update from Mr. Jeff Newman on the MHEC relocation.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Acting Secretary. So we are anticipating moving from our current offices at the Nancy Grasmick building about 4 to 5 blocks east to 217 East Redwood Street. This was a location. It's also and it's the 21st floor of the building. It's an office suite that was formerly occupied by the Department of Juvenile Services. They occupy 4 other floors in the building, and they have taken the offices that were in this 21st floor and moved them within the 4 other floors that they occupy. So we think it's an opportunity for us as an agency to move to an office space where we can be all on the same floor, mainly, which I think will help a lot in inter-office communications, morale, and a general working environment for the agency. We were moved into the Grasmick building 12 years ago with the possibility of being merged into a sort of education department with MSDE. The merger never happened, but the move did. And we were moved into a former file room, which is our 10th floor office suite, and a former menswear shop, which is our ground floor offices of student financial assistance, accounting, and information technology. And then over the years, we had to find more space, and we took some space on the 8th floor. And there's also a little group of there's a group of cubicles on the mezzanine floor that MSDE said we could occupy if we needed them. However, we're hoping to avoid doing that by moving to this new space. The other factor is that this building is over 100 years old, and there's a plan for it in the CIP to have a major renovation occurring within the next 3 to 5 years. That renovation will take 2 years, at which time MSDE and whoever else occupies this building will have to move out to temporary offices for a period of up to 2 years, maybe even longer. We just find that being pretty disruptive. So we thought it would be a good idea to try to, move the offices. The other factor is that the space has a very favorable lease rate. It's about $23.66 per square foot, which for Baltimore City is pretty good, I'm told. Also, it comes furnished. DJS left all the furniture in the offices and in the office suite, so that's also a huge advantage to us. And Dr. Rai, do you want to say anything else about the move?
Oh, that's perfect. The only thing I'll say that MSD, because of the blueprint, is also looking for additional space. Yeah. So this building they can fully occupy, and the resources that we need for the move has been provided in the budget, and we have testified at the General Assembly. We are hoping things are good and everything will be approved, and look forward to essentially rebuilding the agency in a real way.
Yes, at our first agency budget hearing Friday, there was no recommendation to cut that funding, and we're hoping for the same result tomorrow.
Commissioner Agu, do you have a question?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the update. Just quick question. If it can be quantified, can you talk about if there is a kind of savings over time in terms of kind of the lease there versus the lease we currently have? in principle support it. Just it'll be helpful if we could also articulate
Sure.
saving, whether it be to the legislature or anyone else.
Yeah, it's doubtful that there will be saving because we had a pretty good rate here at the Grasmick building, and it was exacerbated by the fact that they never really billed us over the last few years for our lease
That's always nice.
payment. So, yeah, so we were doing pretty well. But I've been told by DGS it is a very favorable lease rate for office space in Baltimore. It's going to be about $300,000 a year for the rent.
And again, in principle, totally support it. I was just curious if there were a good fiscal impact. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
Commissioner Warmack and then Commissioner Howe.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Motz. Mr. Newman, thank you for that information. I'm so glad to know that you're moving to a much better space that suits the needs and the future of where MHEC is going. Just wondered about the technology support. I know at the last couple of meetings we've talked about, having the technology you need to support you. Is that included in your move, or will this provide for, the expansion of your new ERP or whatever you're trying to buy? I'm sure it's not included in the price, but are you going to be able to do that and advocate for that?
Yes, because it was a space occupied by DJS, and we've been over there already with someone from Do It. It's already wired and set for IT. Paris is actually thinking of a wireless option might be the best way to go over there, completely wireless, which, and I asked her, is it going to work? I want to make sure it's going to work because I don't want to have some great new technology not work for us. So, we're going to make sure that we do that. Do It is anticipating coming in and doing a much more formal assessment of what we need. We actually have to pay money to another contractor to do that. And it's not going to affect the progress on the new Maryland student information system that we're working on.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Howe?
You probably said it and I missed it, but is there a timeline for moving forward for us to know when the move will take place?
Yes, so right now the funding is in there for a fiscal 2024 deficiency appropriation, which will become available in April. So when that funding becomes available, and I'm the kind of person who says I'll believe it when I see it. I want to have 2 offices built out. There are 3 conference rooms right now. One is a very large one that DJS just had space that they used as a conference room. I want to have 2 offices built in that space, one for the secretary and one for the deputy secretary, which is also in our budget right now, a deputy secretary position. So there will be a little bit of build out needed to be done. There's the IT work is going to have to be done. And I just talked to the mover yesterday, and we're trying to move in May if we can. They have an issue with voting machines that they have to deliver, or voting, whatever they have to do. But I'm working on it. But like I said, I held off because I want to make sure we're going to have funding to do this. Otherwise, we'll just have to stay here. So, so April through June will be a estimated time frame.
All right, thank you. And this is, I think, great news for MHEC. Thank you so much, and everyone who's worked with you to get this accomplished.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks, Mr. Newman.
Sure, thank you.
Our next speaker continues to be, in my view, the hardest working man in state government, Mr. Al Dorsett, who oversees the Office of Student Financial Assistance. As I think everyone on this call knows, it has been a bumpy year for financial aid because of the delays in the federal FAFSA in the Department of Education. And I think Mr. Dorsett and his team have done a noble job of trying to pivot and be mindful of the needs of our students here in Maryland. And Mr. Dorsett is here to give us an update. So Mr. Dorsett, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair, and the rest of the commissioners, as well as Acting Secretary Rye. It has been a bumpy road, but we are pushing through. So just to give a little bit of background, of course, the Department of Education, initially indicated that the FAFSA would be available by December 31st. We were all kind of like, okay, finally it's available. Then second headache came where they identified that the institutional student information records, which is the ICER data, would not be available to state agencies and institutions of higher education until March. So with that, we talked during the last commission meeting, and we pushed back the filing or final filing deadline date till June 1st. Then recently, another hiccup came where the federal government had identified that there were issues with the Social Security glitch on FAFSA, where students that are eligible to complete the FAFSA but have parents that are undocumented or don't have any Social Security were not able to fully complete the FAFSA. So the student's eligible to complete the FAFSA, student has a social, they can complete the FAFSA, but then when it's triggered over for the parent to put their information and sign a FAFSA, parents did not have access to the studentaid.gov username and password in order to complete it. So with that, they left with FAFSAs not really completed. The federal government recently announced a workaround that they would process the student's FAFSA, but it's really not a workaround that is feasible because it will create confusion and frustration. The issue that we have is that the student will have a rejected FAFSA that would not have a SAI, a student aid index. For those of you who do not know, the student aid index determines the student's Pell eligibility amount, but also within MHEC, we use that student aid index to determine the student's award amount. So with not having the student aid index, even if we could determine that a student is eligible for a Howard P. Rawling grant, we would not be able to determine the amount the student is actually eligible to receive. So with that, putting our minds together, we've pushed back the priority filing date. The priority filing date prior was March 15th, with us scheduled to send out the first initial awards April 15th. The Secretary has been working with the General Assembly to indicate that one, the pushback of not having ICERs available to March would not allow us to meet that April 15th deadline date. But really looking at with the issue that has recently occurred and being equitable across all areas, really needing to push back that May 15th date to allow the federal government to actually fix the problem instead of working a workaround in which we could receive the students' FAFSA information with their SAI. So being that said, we've pushed back the priority filing date now to May 15th. Now, of course, there is concern because with the priority filing date being pushed back to May 15th, we will not be able to do our first round of initial awards till June. So I do have some institutions reaching out about their concern, but the focus when we talked throughout MHEC was that we need to be equitable to everyone. The aspect of giving out funds and exhausting funds when students who have done the FAFSA early and have issues that are not really their fault be penalized but not being eligible for funds. So based off that, the priority filing date has been pushed back to May 15th. We will do our awarding, and the federal government just announced, I believe on February 24th, that they are working on actually fixing the glitch and should have the issue fixed soon. So us extending that time to May 15th gives the federal government time, because we're in March, and then April, time to make that fix so that we can receive all the data and then do awards accordingly to every student that has funds available. Last piece I just want to indicate is that the federal government has provided us with some test ICERs for us to test. They only provided us with 11, but we are pushing forward and testing those. They have announced recently that they will be giving us about 100 more ICERs. So we are waiting for those. And we're really looking to make sure that we can import the information, import matches correctly. We can calculate everything so that we're ready to go as soon as we receive the students' FAFSA information. And the MHEC-1 app is available. Students are completing it. We're waiting on a vendor to provide us a report that hopefully during our next session or commission meeting, we can actually report how many students have completed the MHEC-1 app.
Commissioner Agu.
First of all, Mr. Dorsett and to your whole team, just thank you. I know this has been tremendously difficult, and we are not the only state dealing with this, and so just truly hats off. First of all, two things. One, on the report from the vendor, and I think Commissioner Tabor-Stalen also looked at this. I would also love to see, when I was in product, we used to call the funnel analysis. I want to see the amount of people who started to the amount of people who finished as well. And then to the extent that we can also see it, where they fell off in the process. Again, new tool, totally understand there are going to be glitches, but want to see where folks are falling off. And again, and also want to hear a report on how they're going to fix those parts within the MHEC-1 structure. So that will be a particular piece of data that I would love to see. And another question, which may less be for you, but more for Secretary Rye, as someone who was a federal appointee, I'm wondering about the conversation between us and clearly Jim Qualls' office in the Department of Education. I'm also wondering about the conversation between us and FSA, because to me, this is of a level where I think this should almost be almost bilateral state to department conversation, because this is not Maryland's fault. And
Right.
So I'm wondering if there are things that if those conversations are being had, and how we can move some of that along. So particular piece of data on the vendor side will be, I think helpful for us. And then secondly, how can we accelerate these conversations with the Department of Ed? And I sympathize with them, but I'm a Marylander, and so I want to know how we can make it better for our students.
I think Commissioner Agu, great suggestion. I think for now, I think the patience at the federal level is very thin about any conversation given the challenges. I think that certainly we see the challenges that are there, but in the long run, more Marylanders will be eligible for federal financial aid. That's, I think, a good thing. And the process, after these glitches are sorted out, the process should be simpler. You know very well that large-scale technology implications, especially where you have to connect this with IRS and other things, these things can happen. But, those things should be part of the project management, as you know very well. I don't know the details to say anything, why, some planning was not done or what happened.
We'll never know. We'll never quite know. Again, I'm just thinking about there are students, and Chair Mott's live every day. There are going to be students in the next academic year who don't get that time back. Particularly,
I think having that expertise on the project management team is, I think, essential. You look this issue with Al just put it out. Students who are eligible, students who have social security numbers, we can't assume that all their parents will have social security numbers, right? So those kinds of steps have been missed. That's not a technology issue. That's understanding our student population, our demography. So having all voices in the project management team. Lessons that we are learning from this, Commissioner, is we are doing our own new MDCAP system. We want to make sure that we are doing testings at various stages. and making sure everyone is at the table so we don't miss these types of things.
Commissioner Howe?
You know, if I were a student right now trying to go through this process, I would probably have had a heart attack by now and be on some kind of emotional adjusting medication. You know, the student is just trying to go to school and they need this money so that they have an ability to do that. So, you know, the federal government, in my view, sometimes, and maybe most always, doesn't get it right in the beginning. There's a lot of people involved. I think they all give their input, but sometimes they're even missing people, as I've heard here. So, you know, my prayer is that this gets fixed as quickly as possible so that prospective students can figure out whether or not they're going to get funding. And I'm wondering what effect this is having on any deadlines that are in place for students to even accept their acceptance at a college or university. Are the colleges and universities also extending all their deadlines so that maybe by July they'll be able to see their FAFSA money and know whether or not they're going to be able to attend? Because if not, maybe they have to apply all over again and then start a new process. So I'm very worried about that. Thank you.
Commissioner Dorsett, if you could respond to that, please, and then Commissioner Warmack.
Sure, and that's
Sorry,
why I raised.
Mr. Dorsett, I just promoted you.
Thank you. So that's definitely why I raised my hand. We did meet with the segments recently, our communication team, as well as we discussed during our FACT committee meeting. So many schools are pushing back their deadline dates. We are looking at how we work with institutions, even in the aspect of our website. Communications team is working with institutions, any updates that they have so that we can post it on our website, any financial aid days that they may have. So MHEC can join in with them in finding a way just to promote students, one, completing the FAFSA or completing the MHEC One app as soon as possible, and then understanding what these institutions are doing. But institutions are planning in regards to pushing back their deadline date. They're hoping, just like you, Commissioner Howe, that this gets fixed as soon as possible so they can move forward in awarding students. Some institutions that have private funding and have the resources are still going out with scholarship packages to students and looking at different ways that they can supplement funding for students. So the talk is out there, but many institutions are working to communicate with their students. They understand the same thing that's going on with us, and we're looking at how we partner with them and share information so we're giving the same message to students.
Thanks, Mr. Dorsett. Commissioner Warmack?
Thank you, Chair Motz. That was my question. So thank you, Commissioner Howe, for your second question. And thank you for answering that, Mr. Dorsett. I just wanted to find out where all the dates moved and, you know, are all of our institutions communicating that they're going to have to move the dates. They really have no choice if they want to get students in the door in the fall. Thank you.
Commissioner Williams?
Yeah, just a big thank you to Mr. Dorsett and the team for your nimbleness and flexibility and communication and transparency. You know, it's an unusual year. I think I shared with you, we have a senior in high school who's living this every day, and we're just one of many, many families. So really want to thank you. It feels like the agency is doing what it can be and anticipating and looking around corners to the extent we can. So huge thanks.
Thank you. I just have two quick things to add in my experience in my day job. I think, as most of you all know, I work at a nonprofit in Baltimore City called College Bound. And so our mission is to empower Baltimore City public school students to get to and through college. So we've got 20 full-time advisors in the public schools in Baltimore right now, 5 days a week. And Commissioner Howe, to your point, it has been a struggle. And application numbers are down citywide, statewide, nationally. It's very discouraging. These workarounds don't work as well as hoped. And so, you know, really having the adults in our students' lives, whether they're family members or teachers or school counselors or advisors, is important. But it's a really rough year. And Mr. Dorsett, if you could just lay out for those who are listening on the call, and just to make sure that this has been communicated broadly. So the priority deadline for the Rawlings Awards has been pushed back from March 15th to May 15th, correct, for students to apply,
Yes.
which means that MHEC won't start awarding any money for the Guaranteed Access Grant or the Education Assistance Grant until June, correct?
That is correct.
And is that June 1st or June 15th?
That is more going to be around June 20th, just because with the student having till May 15th, even though it'll still be a small percentage, there is a percentage of students that will get selected for verification. To give those students the opportunity to submit their documents so that we can also have them available to award those students, and that's why we'll have to push it back. We do have to do a small percentage of verification based off what the federal government is showing. They're going to do a small percentage as well, but we'll be looking at individuals that did not import tax information or made a manual change on their tax information. And those will really be the students that there will be a small percentage of us verifying their information, just making sure that their information is correct.
Okay, so putting aside the students who were selected for verification, which I understand is a smaller number this year because we're following the federal government, and in the wake of this, these challenges, the federal government has opted to relax its verification standards,
Right.
or at least verify a smaller number of students.
Yeah.
So the first MHEC money that any Maryland student is going to see this year is going to be around June 20th.
Yes, that is correct.
And as my fellow commissioners have pointed out, this money is often very important for a student deciding where to attend school because you want to compare financial aid packages.
Yes.
So all of the colleges and the segments, all of the four-year colleges, public and private, and the two-year colleges, they are aware of these date changes. And as Commissioner Howe and Wormack asked, they're pushing their dates back so that students don't have to accept at a school until they know what their money is going to look like. Is that right?
So they are aware that we're pushing the dates back. Their reason for pushing their dates back, I can't say that is the case of why they're doing it. They just indicated that they were pushing their dates back because of the issues that are going on with the FAFSA, but we have notified them through the FAC committee as well as through a press release that was sent out or notification that was sent out this past or earlier this week that these dates will be pushed back, as well as updating our website on it. So they are aware. Some have already called me asking if we can have a discussion about it because they do have some concerns. But again, the biggest thing that we've pushed for them is we want to be equitable across the board to all students. It does help a little bit by pushing these dates back as well, because it will give us a better reflection of how many initial applicants for EA we will actually be able to award, since that final deadline date is going to be June 1st.
Okay, so the priority deadline is May 15th, but the final deadline is June 1st. The first time any student is going to see money from MHEC is June 20th. So that is a big sea change from years past. Again, there's not a lot we can do about it because we don't have the information we need from the federal government. I do think communication is really important. I did see that press release that went out yesterday, but I would encourage your team and Mr. Coley, your team, Secretary Rye, to really get the word out to students and families, to the K-12 system, make sure all of the LEAs and the school counselors there are aware, the community-based organizations, really just spread the word and make sure that people understand why and what the deadlines are, because this is impacting tens of thousands of students across the state. And, we can't necessarily know that they're going to know to look on the MHEC website. So we really got to get the word out.
Right. We've also reached out to MSDE representatives, so we're waiting for them to contact us back so we could work jointly with them to inform the LEAs and other high school officials.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Just another thank you to Al Dorset and his team.
Yes. Agreed. Thank you, Mr. Dorset, and to
Thank
your
you
team.
for your support.
All right, thank you. Our next agenda item is Dr. Emily Dow from the Department of Academic Affairs, who's going to give an update on the legislation that Dr. Ryan and I testified on yesterday and will be testifying on later today. Dr. Dow.
Good morning, Chair Motz and fellow commissioners. Thank you. I will be brief in these remarks as you've heard much about these bills already. So let me just give you some of the facts, what's going on, and what we've done so far. So there are two bills, House Bill 1244 and Senate Bill 1044. These bills reflect the recommendations from the Academic Program Review Work Group that met late summer into the fall, and I provided a presentation at last meeting regarding the recommendations. So these bills reflect statutory changes to implement those recommendations. They center around 10 items or 11 items, depending on how you're counting. Everything from a collaboration with commerce and labor on new workforce standards and how to identify emerging fields and where our workforce demands are and the data sources for that, an update to the state plan, providing a harm report for when we do duplicate programs, looking to evaluate if harm is evident, establishing a proposed program collaborative grant fund, evaluating the definition of a substantial modification. I won't go through each one of them, but it is a pretty extensive list of changes. We have the agency, Secretary Rye has provided a letter of support for this bill. And as you just heard, both Secretary Rye and Chair Motz provided oral testimony yesterday for the House hearing, and they will provide oral testimony in support of the bill for the Senate later this afternoon. We did indicate two friendly technical amendments to the bill. One is clarifying language regarding the review meeting that happens with you all as commissioners. As written right now, it's a little confusing, and we just want to make sure it actually references the review meeting that is established by regulation and make sure that that language is clear. The second technical amendment is regarding the harm report. As drafted, we would do that report every 4 years. We have requested that we do that report every year. So we are hopeful that they are amenable to both of those friendly amendments. We've said in our documentation that we can implement most of these initiatives with existing resources and existing staff, with the exception of two of them. One is the collaborative grant fund. Should that be funded, we do need somebody in the grants team to oversee that, work closely with the academic affairs team in terms of implementation, but that would be a pretty new responsibility for the grants department. And the second would be somebody to staff the role for collaboration with labor and commerce, that really needs to be a senior level role and part of senior staff to really make sure that everyone in the agency is engaged as we work with labor and commerce. Last thing I'll share is we've already begun working on some of these initiatives. So we have already started the work in establishing a work group to review the substantial modification definition. We asked all of our segments to submit names for representation on that work group, and that was due last Friday. So we're in the midst of scheduling the first several meetings for that work group to meet, and I'll continue to provide updates to the commissioners as that progresses. And that work group will likely lead, not even likely, it will lead to regulatory changes. So you'll see the fruits of that labor as that progresses. The second thing that we've already begun work on is the development of an administrative procedures guide. I want to give a shout out to our Associate Director, Dr. Lindsay Silva, who has started that work, and her team in creating a forward-facing administrative procedures guide. We will be expected to produce that every year, post it to our website, and update it accordingly. So we will, again, keep you posted as that progresses. And then last, as I've referenced, we've started some initial discussions with Department of Commerce and Department of Labor regarding how this collaboration between our three agencies would work. In fact, there's been some revived energy around aerospace technology, and this is the perfect example of our three agencies really coming together. Industry approached commerce and said, hey, we need more people, we need specific kinds of people. Labor's getting involved with that, and so now we come in to say, okay, what kind of academic programs do we have? How can we expand existing programs? What do we need to change for? So we are very early stages, but this has been kind of the perfect test the waters to see how our three agencies can collaborate for a particular industry in aerospace and aerospace engineering. So with that, I will stop and happy to answer questions on that update.
Commissioner Serrano, Commissioner Warmack, and then Commissioner Agu, please.
Yeah, just one quick question. Like on the bill of HP 1244, I think I'm forgetting the number. But the language is, I think it's like on letter of intent for duplication in graduate programs. Have we ever had a situation where there was a controversy between two universities with undergraduate programs?
We have. Off the top of my head, cannot reference them explicitly, but there have been instances where we've received objections around undergraduate programs. So yes.
So should we?
Most recently, there was a Bachelor of Science in Nursing.
I was going to say Allegheny, Frostburg, or something like that. No.
No, that was two other institutions.
Okay, but so. Is there a reason why it was only graduate programs and not graduate and undergraduate?
That was part of the work group recommendations that the work group discussed and voted on. So it's sourced from the work group discussions and recommendations.
And sorry, one last question. So like so should this pass, and on the the gladiator fighting between the two universities, that stops at the graduate level. Could it potentially continue at the undergraduate level?
Potentially, yes. The objection process would still exist. And so that's something we would talk through. The legislation requires the letters of intent for graduate programs, but it does not, as written right now, prohibit the objection process from proceeding with undergraduate programs.
Commissioner Warmack, and then Commissioner
Agu. Thank you, Dr. Dow. I appreciate the information and great update, and you're making great progress on this. I just had a quick question. The collaborative grant, you said there are two things that you can't implement without additional resources. I didn't hear the first one.
Sure. So yeah, collaborative grant, and then this statewide collaboration with labor and commerce on identifying workforce need. Okay. So the expectation is that our three agencies would together identify data sources, identify industries and occupations that are of high demand, include that information as an addendum to the state plan, and that would get updated regularly at a minimum every year.
Yeah, but I didn't hear what type of position are you looking for the first one? I heard the labor commerce, that you wanted a high level position, but for the first collaborative grant funded program,
I believe it would be in the grants team.
The grants team.
Small grants team. I don't know if it's a grants manager or a grants analyst. I looked to my colleague, Mr. Newman, to see if he can weigh in.
Yeah, we'd probably be adding just a staff member to the grants group. Yeah.
Okay. And then I just had a quick question. I know the timeline is driven by what the legislature will put as their dates, but is there a timeline for completing and implementing the regulatory changes yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Our goal is as quickly as possible with appropriate stakeholder engagement, so it is not a surprise when we bring them to you. Okay. So we're starting that work, and it is as quickly as we can get through it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Agu? I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, my microphone went off. First of all, thank you so much for the work, Dr. Dow, and your whole team. Just two quick questions and one bigger one. Are the two bills in the House and the Senate the same? Are there any differences? Oh, okay, they are the same. Great. So no surprises, which is great. Secondly, the recommendation on the rewrite of the Maryland higher ed plan, that is still in both bills, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that would be quite right. And then thirdly, just really to say, I'm happy to hear about the collaboration between Labor, Commerce, and MHEC. If I can be helpful, just because I've lived that many times in many lives, happy to be such. 'Cause it's a really important collaboration, and we need to get right. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dow. Thank you for your work and the presentation. Question regarding the report out. You mentioned that you're recommending a change. Could you clarify a little bit more about why and what you're recommending?
Sure. For the
Thank you.
amendments?
Yes.
Great.
The report.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
So the report would require the agency to evaluate harm to existing programs at Maryland's HBCUs if and when we allow duplication. So duplication is allowable if either under the secretary's determination or if it goes to the commission in extenuating circumstances, particularly if there's an educational justification. So there could be instances where duplication is allowed. The legislature has said, okay, in those instances, we want the agency to evaluate harm to see if harm actually occurred because of the duplication. And so in the past, we've had things like, or instant arguments made that faculty, they would lose faculty, the clinical placement issue, changes in enrollment. This will now require the agency to evaluate that after a potentially duplicative program is approved. The change that we are asking is, as it's drafted right now, that report would happen every 4 years. We would like for that report to happen every year.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you. I understand now.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? I would just add that relevant to this commission in particular, other changes that may not have been specifically touched on is, but I think most of you know, if you've read the bill, they are adopting many of the transparency measures that we've already undertaken. For example, we sought the Attorney General's opinion back in the summertime about how many commissioners are needed for a vote to overturn the Secretary's decision. And the Attorney General said a majority of all commissioners appointed, not just all commissioners present. And they are codifying that in law, which we think is a good idea, clearly, because we're already doing it. As you all know, for the first time since, in many years, in the two opinions, written opinions that we've had in the past several months, the first two for many of us, we actually said in the written decision what the vote count was and which commissioners voted which way, again, in an effort of increased transparency. And I think the legislative work group appreciated that and is actually taking it one step further and is requiring all of our meetings to be in person, not in person, sorry, open to the public, which is great. And all of our deliberations open to the public, which is something new for us, but that will also be part of the law, which I think is a good thing. I think the more transparency, the better. And that was what the work group recommended, and that's what the law said. So I just wanted everyone to be sure everybody was aware of that. And then I know we as commissioners, as we were evaluating the two cases that have come before us in recent times, we were very focused on data and having a uniform set of data that we could all rely on. And so the comments that Dr. Dow and others have made about having this collaboration between the departments of commerce and labor with MHEC, and each agency having a dedicated person just to assess and evaluate workforce needs and figure out what the common data sets are and bring them to us as fact finders, I think will also be very helpful. And then the last piece of the bill that I'm really excited about is the fact that institutions have been incentivized to collaborate. I think Commissioner Serrano earlier referred to the gladiator style of, the hearings can tend to be adversarial. And I think that we as the agency and as the commission have tried to make the point, and I think others agree, that we in Maryland should be focusing on our vast resources and we should be collaborating. The competition should be the other states, right? Not another institution within your own state. And so there's an effort to be more collaborative in various parts of the legislation. So my testimony, everyone's only allowed 2 minutes. My testimony really focuses on those 3 points that we really appreciate: the transparency, the collaboration, and the data-driven strategic decision-making. So that is what I presented yesterday and what I'll present again today. So I do think it will pass. There were no questions. The only question that we got yesterday was whether the pause would continue, the voluntary pause on the contested review hearings. And I answered that yes, the pause continues to be voluntary, but we continue to encourage institutions to take advantage of it until the law passes and the regulations required by the law are rolled out. And as Dr. Dow said, this will continue to be a very collaborative process with the institutions. We want everyone's buy-in as the regulations are written that implement this law. So I think, and Dr. Dow has a timeline. There was a question about timeline. She definitely has a plan, and so there won't be any surprises for us as commissioners, and the work has already begun, as Dr. Dow said. I just want to add my thanks to Dr. Dow and to her entire team, not just for the update today, but for the months of work that has gone on representing MHEC with Dr. Rai at the work group, and all of the behind the scenes work to try to fix this process that we all agree is in need of in need of reform. So thank you, Dr. Dow, on behalf of all of us commissioners. We realize it's a heavy lift, and we've got the right person for the job leading the charge. Any other comments before we get to our last agenda item? All right. The last agenda item is a progress update on the post-2025 completion goal development. Dr. Rai, is that you?
That's Dr. Dow.
Dr. Dow again. I'm actually sitting in the same room here in Annapolis with Dr. Dow, so I will turn it over to you.
Great.
We can't hear you, Dr. Dow.
That was my fault. I put the mute on by mistake. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. Secretary Rai asked that I provide some updates regarding some recent developments in the post-2025 goal development. We have prepared a survey that will go out to all entities, far and wide, not just higher ed, but industry, governor's office, the public writ large, regarding questions about what the public thinks should be our priorities in setting the post-2025 goals. We have not released this survey yet, and we wanted to give you all the opportunity to see a draft of it and provide feedback and weigh in. So let me share my screen. I will not go through these too much in detail, but you can, what I'd like to do is just share a flavor of the questions for you and see what your thoughts are. So we have a preamble here. We have focused the questions on 5 main topics: prioritizing equity, identifying and defining what a meaningful credential is, a discussion around production goals versus population goals, if there's interest or motivation to do industry-specific goals, and then should we also adopt research goals? These are optional questions. Individuals can respond to any, all, 1, 2, 3, whatever they would prefer. We provide examples in what other states are doing for some of these initiatives. So you'll be able to click into those hyperlinks And so for equity, we have, what do you think are the top 3 specific populations Maryland needs to target to address equity gaps in college attainment? In the examples we provide, Massachusetts has a very specific goal. By 2030, the rate at which the Massachusetts public higher education system graduates African American and Latinx students will increase to 51% and 50% respectively, outpacing the current rate. Similarly, Colorado has specific populations for Hispanic, African American, and Native American populations. So that's all to say, we would want to know from the public, what do you think for Maryland? What are the populations we should focus on? And then any additional thoughts they may have on equity. Then moving into meaningful credentials, defining what that is. Right now, the Maryland goal is specific to associate's degrees or higher, but we know that there are lots of other types of post-secondary opportunities. So we've got to figure out what we mean when we say a meaningful credential. So we have some options here: credentials that lead to a living wage upon completion, credentials in which students incur no or little debt. I won't read all of these, but you can see we have some defining factors allowing the public to indicate, yes, I think this should be included, or no, I don't. And then certainly an option for what other elements should be included for meaningful credential. The third consideration, again, is this idea of a production goal versus a population goal. Our current goal is considered a population goal, that 55% of Marylanders will have at least an associate's degree. But there are some states that also have production goals, that they are saying, we are going to graduate a certain number of students by a certain time. And so there's value to both possibilities. And so providing an opportunity, again, for the public to provide input on production versus population goals. The fourth consideration are research goals. Again, Texas has a specific research goal that is to have $1 billion in annual private and federal research development expenditures by 2030, and to award 7,500 research doctorates annually. So it's an example of how states are recognizing that higher education has this element of research and scholarship. A question here, if we were to engage or develop a research goal, who should we talk to? And what are the metrics we should be looking at for a research goal? Should we focus on expenditures, doctoral awards? Should we focus on patents or campus-based incubators or private-public commercialization projects? What should we focus on if we're going to do a research goal? What should be the metrics? And then the last consideration is industry-specific goals. Again, other states have industry-specific goals. Colorado has set environmental goals to reduce statewide greenhouse gases. California is working to address staffing shortages in home care workers. So a question out to the public: what are the high demand fields Maryland should focus its attention on? Certainly, I think everybody would say nurses and teachers, but there may be other emerging fields as we do think about green energy and the environmental goals, but there may be others, and providing the public the opportunity to share that with us. And then what are some of the emerging fields that Maryland should focus? And again, who are the key stakeholders that we should consult with in thinking about industry or emerging field goals? So with that, one more thing. We decided to keep this anonymous, but we do have a handful of questions just to figure out who they are so we can contextualize their answers. And there is an opportunity for them to share their contact information with us if we wanted to follow up with them. How we plan to get this survey out to the public is we would share it with certainly all of the higher education leadership, but work closely with Labor, Commerce, Department of Health, all of our sister agencies. We have a short list of both Maryland-specific associations as well as national associations. Even if we get feedback from our sister states, I think that would be helpful information to think about. So this really, we intend for this to go out far and wide. So with that, I open it up for questions and obviously discussion amongst yourselves.
Commissioner Agu and then Commissioner Serrano.
I think two questions. One, on the back end, how do you want to use this data? Is this purely to inform the completion group process? Is this something that you plan to kind of make public? Is this kind of going to be the centerpiece of some stakeholder meeting or engagement? Just how do you think about using the data once you have it?
Sure. I think how we have discussed and envisioned it is we would report back to you all as commissioners around themes. So we would take this, analyze it, and then act upon certainly key stakeholders and make sure that they are involved, that we recognize their involvement. And then any of those content-driven pieces of information, we would summarize and present back to you all in this setting.
Got it. No, that's helpful. I think I'll say the survey, the categories make sense to me. A lot of the questions make sense to me. No big flags there. Can you remind me again that last category?
Industry specific.
Yes, that was my last question, which is in some ways this is a little. The ideal would be, and I know that Secretary Anderson at Commerce is working on this. They are working on an economic development strategy for the state, focusing on key industries. And I'll speak for me. To me, those two things should be totally aligned. In those are the occupations that we should be focusing on. Those are the industries. I always am wary of we coming up with a list of industries that we should focus on versus what commerce or labor is as well, or even the governor himself. And so I don't have a comment or thing to do here, but I am wary of having dueling lists of target industries. So I just want to name that. And I do not know if Secretary Anderson and his team will have that list ready by the time this survey goes out. I'm skeptical, even though I know that they're working super hard. But I just wanted to name that as a potential bit of a disjuncture that I would like to avoid.
Can I just add one? So, Commissioner, wonderful comment. We know that in Governor Moore's administration, we want to make sure there is no isolated decisions. Right. So with this survey, what I have seen in my experience, themes will emerge. Sure. Right? Based on those themes, we again go to stakeholders and say, hey, this is what we are hearing. Then we will have a steering committee. Secretary of Labor and Secretary of Commerce will be on the steering committee, among others. Then don't forget, we have your expertise. So, we will be coming to you and you will be hopefully, pretty deeply engaged with this effort. When it comes to target industries, lagging data, but also looking forward, right? So today we need, 20,000 C++ programmer. But as AI is coming, what is emerging? So for emerging field, you don't have a historical data. So this is where I think we will have to think about as a state, where do we want to bet? Are we going to bet on machine learning, AI, quantum computing, or, intersections of life sciences and quantum computing? So as a state, we need to have a bet. North Carolina decided to have, these batteries, right? So, and they're benefiting from it. Massachusetts put money, $1 billion in life sciences. Right. They're benefiting. So we can be doing everything. So I think that is a message to all agencies. And I think Secretary Wu and Secretary Anderson and all of us, I think we are converging to those areas. So, what are the emerging areas of global economy and national economy? Number one. Number two, where we have strength to be competitive. There are areas where no matter what, emerging economy is emerging, but we cannot be competitive. So looking at those in a judicious way, where Maryland can be competitive, then not only in creating talent, but research and innovation. How can we have more startups coming out of our institutions of higher education? Can that be a part of a matrix? Patents, how many patents, but what is the market value of each patent? Especially for our targeted industries, whatever those 2 or 3 or 4 industries are, right? So looking at those types of things, my hope is that we will move forward and come up with something good. The other is industry-specific goals. I personally feel that they are also important goals, because if we don't have those goals as a state, we do get behind. You know, uh, we didn't anticipate need for teachers the way it is today, right? And can we systematically work that we will have we'll produce 100,000 teachers, how many in math and science, and they will represent the demography of our state. I looked at the data, I think, several years ago. Entire state, we produce one high school chemistry teacher. We are a life sciences is the backbone of our economy. Look at all institutions in the state of Maryland. We produce one high school chemistry teacher. So we don't want to be in that situation, right? So industry-specific goals are also, I think, in my opinion, hopefully it will be supported by all of you and others. We need to get at the micro level also, not just pie in the sky.
Thank you.
Commissioner Serrano? And then I think there's one other person. Let's see. Go ahead, Commissioner Serrano. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess kind of building off of Commissioner Agu's question, but I guess it's more of like kind of a gauging of the institutional appetite for it, and then the potential for having some kind of either money thrown behind an initiative. I feel like a concept of measuring something and assessing something without having some kind of backing for an appetite for it. It's just kind of I feel like we're kind of setting ourselves up in the sense of saying, well, we want to do X, Y, and Z, but we don't have any money to do it. So we were just kind of giving you a teaser. So that's one concern I have. The other concern I had is more on the question of equity. And so I felt like it's a little bit too open-ended. I think it's I think of because equity seems like kind of like a liquid noun. It could mean race, ethnicity, Pell Grants, low income. I mean, it means I just feel like it needs to be tightened up a little bit, and so that people have a little bit more of a guide to go by.
So, Commissioner Serrano, I completely agree. As we set our goals, you saw some of the examples from other states. We will take some lessons from there. And in terms of more resources for what we are trying to do, as a state, we spend more than $2.7 billion in higher education. It is not just a question of more resources. How are we using our resources, and how are they tied to where we want to go as a state? So I think its question is not just having more money. How are we doing the existing money, and how do we divert our existing resources to the state goals? So I think we will have to work together with all the institutions. Speaking to people, in my experience, people are excited about these things. As a state, we are looking, everybody is looking for this kind of goals as a state and objectives, so we can all work together and achieve these objectives for the state and for people who live here.
Thanks, Dr. Rai. Commissioner Williams, and then Commissioner Thompson. I think you're on mute, Commissioner Williams.
Let's try that. Yeah, thank you. It's a fascinating discussion. I think it's really exciting for an advanced economy, and particularly in the professions we've been talking about that are necessary in society and emerging fields. I agree that it needs to be micro on Maryland, but I wonder if we should also make sure we understand regional and national trends in production of those advanced field degrees or other degrees. Where are we exporting talent? Where are we importing currently? And then how does that match up with our overall vision for planning? I think it's important to have heads down about what we need to do, but we also need to be aware of other state plans as they're updating theirs and their production and their cutting edge fields, how we attract that talent, and then how we keep the highest talent here. So I just would encourage, as we think about these 5 areas, I think that applies to each of those areas, honestly, to have a broader regional and national understanding while we compose, the beginning of a 2025 and beyond plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Excellent suggestion. We have to not only look at other states, but also other countries. There are cities in different parts of the world, not countries, cities that are spending $1 billion on quantum computing alone. So I think we have to look at globally what is happening. The point here is this: a world-class economy cannot be created without a serious engagement of higher education. Higher education in terms of talent creation, in terms of talent attraction. If we were offering a graduate degree in machine learning for $5,000, we will suck all the talent here, right? So we will have to be smart about how to bring talent here. And talent will come through innovative programming at institutions of higher education. Talent will not come when biggest artificial intelligence company comes to Maryland, then you start attracting the talent. Then you do get behind. As you see in this survey that Dr. Dow and her team has put together, other states are ahead. So we're starting from behind. We set a goal in 2013, and then after that, we haven't looked at this as seriously. So we're starting from behind. This is one advantage. When you start from behind, you can learn from others, right? But we want to be innovative. We want to create a plan that is best for Maryland by learning from all these other plans.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson?
Yes, thank you. I'm thinking that some of what we've been talking about needs to be placed in an overview before the survey, actually, before the instructions even. Dr. Rye, you mentioned some excellent points. I think we need to share, for example, what does Maryland spend on higher education? Something needs to be stated about that, either with what we do in the state compared to other states or national, or even internationally. What is it so great about Maryland that we even need this survey, so to speak? I think something needs to be really pinpointed in the overall instructions and overview. So when someone opens up this survey, they have a good understanding, and it possibly can help guide their answers in a better way.
Dr. Dow, I think that makes a lot of sense, Dr. Thompson. I think Dr. Dow is nodding here. I think she agrees.
100%. Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I just want to share, thank you for all of this feedback. We will edit the survey accordingly. I do have some ideas in terms of making it shorter, trying to do targeted questions using our social media platforms so that we can make this as accessible, because I'm sure people are going to open up that survey and think, you want me to do what with it? So we're trying to also think creatively while at the same time, Commissioner Thompson, contextualize it so that people know why we're even asking these questions and why this is important. I want to also just share with you that we are in conversation, certainly with our Director of Research and Policy Analysis at MHEC, Dr. Schmertz, as well as MLDS, the feasibility of some of these metrics, right? how we actually get these data. So it's one thing to be like, okay, we want to talk about research, but what do we know about research and how? So we'll also have additional conversations, particularly with the institutions, because if we can tag on to data sources that they're already reporting to middle states, reporting to iPads, so that we actually have the metrics. We're not creating a new collection. We're not adding burden. So that is another element to this that we will be doing in tandem to figuring out what makes sense for the state as a whole. So want to be thoughtful about, it's one thing to count students. It's another thing to count licenses. It's another thing to count research dollars. It's another thing to identify specific demographic data to identify or evaluate equity gaps. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Commissioner Warmack.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Dow, and thank you, Dr. Rye, for that preamble overview about what the direction of where we're headed. Just want to get a feel for the timeline for this. When are you going to release it? And
Sure.
to start reporting on some of this information.
Absolutely. So let me start with the big timeline and then narrow to kind of the most immediate issues. So big timeline is by mid to late summer. We have a good handle on the types of goals that we want to focus on, as well as the potential. Are we talking about another percentage? Are we talking about numbers of dollars? So something to base it. So it's not just, we will have made decisions. Yes, we're going to approach equity issues, and we've identified some populations that we need to focus on. So by end of summer, mid to late summer, you all will have had multiple presentations, and we would come to you to say, look, this is where we think we need to go with actual goals, so that we enter into the legislative preparatory time in early fall with this kind of on the radar for potential legislation, and all the while also working with the governor's office. So that's kind of a big target that we're trying to hit. So in the immediate, we'd like this survey to go out likely in the next week. We'll definitely take this feedback, edit the survey accordingly, and at minimum get it up on our website, circulated on listservs, and the like. And then again, work with our outreach team, our communications department, on targeted use of social media. So we'll do that data collection over the next 3 to 4 weeks. I'll report back to you all on kind of number of hits, how it's going at the March meeting, with then a summary at the April meeting, really kind of pulling apart what kind of information we've gotten through this public dissemination. At the same time, we will continue to meet with labor, commerce. I think there's even an element that we need to talk with MSDE, our K through 12, because some of these are initiatives that are happening in our high schools. And then, of course, certainly working with our segmental leaders in higher ed. So we'll continue to have those conversations while this survey is going on. But I think that's the short timeline as well as the long timeline. So definitely an update in March with detailed information at the April meeting and a detailed presentation. And then we can reevaluate next steps at the April commission meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Dow. I just had one more quick question. That very good information. So we're trying to target making sure that we're at the legislative table with our information in the fall. Good to know. Any room for focus groups? Because it seems to me like the equity discussion is going to require some focus group work. Is there any room in the schedule for some focus groups around that? Commissioner Serrano made an excellent point. That's a big map. So will there be room for you to get together to kind of go back and talk to groups about the equity topic, possibly?
I think absolutely. And I think that will come to surface, especially again, identifying the key stakeholders to have those conversations with. So I think the short answer is yes. It'll just be a matter of
when you
actualizing that and making it happen. But yes.
Okay. Thank you. Excellent survey. Just excellent thought process around that. I absolutely love it. And I'm glad that you all are going forward with that. Thank you, Dr. Dow, for your very, very hard work among all of your other duties and responsibilities to try to get this out for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Agu.
And Chair Motz, I did not talk to you about this beforehand, but beyond the thanks, I think, and I've mentioned this, I think, before previously, I think we need a committee of the commission that is a subset of this group that is working on this on a regular basis in concert with thinking about the Maryland higher ed plan, because effectively the plan that we create will be to effectuate this goal. So I'm going to say this. I don't see our lawyers on screen, so I'm assuming that they will.
I think Ms. Ward is with us, our principal.
Yes, I think. I will wait for the Deus ex machina to tell me if I'm right or wrong in terms of procedurally how I would do this. But I would want to make a motion that we create this committee. I think procedurally we can populate it afterward. But I think it's creating it so that we have this subset of folks who can support Dr. Rye in the completion goal conversation, but then also so that we will need to think about the Maryland higher ed plan, because I assume this bill will be passed before the end of the session. And therefore, I believe our goal is, by session in 25, we need to have if I remember it from the recommendation, a new higher ed plan. I forget the exact timeline.
I think it's January 1st, 2025. So you're
Correct.
right.
So
We've got
we
less
need to-
than a year.
Yeah, so these two things need to start in tandem. So I would want to, unless Miss Ward, unless I'm wrong in terms of procedurally how I'm doing this, I would want to make a motion to create this committee to look at the completion plan, the completion goal, as well as the Maryland higher ed plan to effectuate it.
Ms. Ward?
I hear no lawyer response. I'm going to assume that it's legal and correct.
I think Ms. Ward is coming off mute.
Commissioner Agu, that's not necessarily correct. I'm just writing down what you said.
Oh, no worries. But I basically just want to create a committee of the commission to focus on the completion goal as well as the Maryland higher ed plan, because I think the two conversations go together.
Can we do that today, Ms. Ward? In light of the conversation about this topic, I would say it sort of came up spontaneously, but it's important given we only have 10 months left.
Yep.
Or should we wait should we put it on the agenda and do it next meeting?
I think it's probably wise to put it on the agenda for next time, since it wasn't on this agenda, and so you're not really giving anyone notice. But I would also remind the commission that with subcommittees, you cannot have a quorum of your members on a subcommittee, then you become a public body. So it cannot be a quorum of this body.
So 5 people or less is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Correct?
On this commission, is it 12?
There are 12, but we only have 6 appointed right now, although there is a 7th one who has been nominated by the governor. So you're right. 7, ultimately we'll have 7. Ultimately we'll have 12 and 7 would be a quorum.
Right.
So probably to be safe for now, we would want 5 commissioners or fewer so that it wouldn't be a quorum of the commission. Is that right, Ms. Ward?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm happy to follow the recommendation and unless there's an objection, and I know Judge Howe has a question, to put that on the agenda for next time. But Judge Howe, I'm happy to defer.
Okay, I would move to postpone any vote on this motion made by Commissioner Agu until our next meeting.
Second.
And I think that would give me an opportunity to look at a couple things in the Open Meetings Act that I want to make sure of with respect to. That's why, Commissioner Agu, I asked you specifically what it is that you want this committee to do, because you want to make sure that whatever it is you're asking your committee to do, it is not what this board is charged with the task of doing. So if you could table that until the next meeting, that would be great.
And then Ms. Ward, if we could have maybe, I'm not sure if it's an offline conversation, just to make sure it's scoped properly, that might be helpful, just so we can make sure that that's done. But I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Agu, for being so proactive, because I agree. We got to get on this state plan and the completion goal. Any other questions or comments? All right, colleagues. Well, our next meeting is March 20th, which is the 3rd Wednesday, not our usual 4th Wednesday. I just wanted to note that for everybody. We will, hopefully most of us will be in person still at the Grasmick building for now. And there will be a remote option, of course. I also wanted to note another calendar change. The September meeting has been moved from the 4th Thursday to the 3rd, the 4th Wednesday to the 3rd Wednesday. So it's now September 18th. I think Debbie Ng sent notification about that, but I just wanted to flag that for everybody. So if there's no further questions or comments, could we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Any opposition or abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Thank you all for your attention and your public service, and look forward to seeing you in March.
Okay, good.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Good luck today.
Good luck.
Thank you, Chair Motz.